Hey, good morning, folks. We are going to work on some more artwork for the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration supplement that we have been creating here online. That's going to publish on DMsGuild for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Give me a second here to check my signal, go through my intro spiel, and then we'll get to work here this morning. So checking, give me a second here to check in on this. Mic check, mic check. One, two, three. On this. Yeah, sounds pretty good. All right. And let's get busy living here, getting through my intro spiel. We will begin that now. Hey, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing game supplements. I illustrate them and then publish them online. I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for the past number of years. Hold on real quick. Something seems off. I gotta double check myself here. OOB 007. Okay, that's good. 007. Yeah, okay, great. There we go. I'm sorry. So let's try that again. I create role-playing games. I illustrate them. I publish them online. I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition for the past number of years. There are a slew of links in the description down below that point to work that I've previously produced. It's all 100% free preview. So if you're here specifically for pixels and illustrations, there's probably about 150 of them down below. And so if you click on the full preview of the various books, then you'll be able to look at all the illustrations that I've previously produced. There we go. Otherwise, let's see. Beep. If you're a D&D enthusiast for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, like I said, the stuff is extensive free previews. So whether you're a DM or a player, regardless of what side of the screen you're facing, there's content there for you to potentially add to your campaign or for your character to enhance your play experience. If you find this stuff is cool, consider making a purchase to support the growth of the stream. Otherwise, you can support me by following me on Twitter at Phil Kearney. But best way, of course, as always, is to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications of when I'm live in the future. So what are we doing? This is Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. This is a supplement that we've been creating since Spelljammer came out. This has been in production. So we're a little, what are we at? Episode 220 now, so we're a bit over a year now that we've been producing this, and so we have a 110-page document here of supplemental mechanics for equipment, combat, and exploration modes of adventure for the Spelljammer setting. So we come with an idea, we play test this stuff. If it plays well, we start doing text to clean up. We hire an editor and send it off to the editor to process. We then drop all the text that we produce into individual pages. We then, once we're content with the document as a whole, we then take each individual page. Like here, for instance, the pilot roll page. We take this as a PDF. We extract that page. We then come over here into Photoshop and we drop this page. Here we go. See, pilot checks, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Pilot checks, blah, blah, blah. We take these, we take the gaps in the document and we fill it with artwork. So that's what we're doing. We're filling it with artwork. When it's all done, we then publish the thing. I will put it on DMsGuild, like all the links down below. It'll also have a free preview. In addition to that, though, there's about 70 some odd tokens of NPCs, creatures, ships, as well as 9 maps that we provide for everything that's in Light as Araxis, which is the back 20 pages of this document. Is you take all these different ship mechanics, combat and exploration mechanics that are in the book, and then we use them in the we convert Light as Araxis using these mechanics as a proof of concept. So when you buy this book, you're not only getting all these mechanics for you to be able to have rulings inside of your game that are consistent, but it also allows you to convert Light of Zaraxis using these mechanics so that you can experience it firsthand. And if you love how it plays, then it opens up new opportunities for you to continue to explore ideas in the future. So I've got an extra page down here real quick. I'm going to take a look at this guy, see what you're all about. What are you all about here, extra guy? Galleon Squadron to the rescue. Huh. Okay, looks like, well, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. We're still doing formatting for the back end of the book, for the Light of Zaraxis section. But we'll get to that in due time. We're currently focusing on the combat section of the book. We're in the ship roles again here, in the pilot roles. So let's go ahead and focus our attention here. We're looking at how ships and pilots interact and taking damage within an area of effect. And the illustration here, the example is being hit by a fireball while piloting a skiff, and choosing to how much of the damage you as a pilot want to take versus how much damage do you want the actual ship to take. So we have a tradesman here with somebody lobbing a fireball off the tradesman to hit this blast effect where the fighter craft is inside of. I'm pretty happy with the illustration as a whole. I mean, it's very, very small. So there you go. We have the tradesman ship here, and there's a fireball being lobbed. And there we go for the crew trying to avoid set effects. So where we're at right now is we are simply illustrating the fireball. So I have the pleasure of spending the next hour on this fireball specifically. Just building out these little licks of flame and just having some fun with it. So let's have some fun with it. We're just going to sit here and doodle for a while. Don't have much of an agenda for today other than pushing some pixels around. I'm going to actually add an extra layer so I can start dabbing in some color effects through here. And once we finish these effects, the fireball will be done. I'm here 6 days a week, Monday through Friday in the morning like this. We work on Eberron art. We do Spelljammer art like we're doing here for this book to publish. Mondays and Thursday nights, we work on an Eberron adventure that we'll be publishing on DMsGuild as well. We do cartography. Currently, we're doing cartography and NPC tokens. So you can check that stuff out on Mondays and Thursdays. On Saturdays tomorrow, we work on either personal projects or commissions. And currently I'm commissioned to create a book cover for one of my co-creators, Andy Headley, as well as Brian Holmes, who I greatly respect, who's done a lot. Both have done a lot of work in the RPG space, as well as on DMsGuild specifically for D&D. So you can check that out. And then on Tuesdays, I create, I develop mechanics for my next project after this and the Eberron adventure, which will be the martial power system, which provides a mana resource for martial characters to essentially converting the Battlemaster maneuvers into spell-like effects that spend mana like a half-caster. And but there's 140 different abilities that we've developed to pick from that you can swap out on short rests and long rests, like spellcasters can, for you to adapt what your martial character, like a fighter, barbarian, ranger, paladin, rogue, monk, can do, both in combat as well as exploration and social encounters, to give you basically floating abilities that you can spend spell points on, kind of like a monk's key, to be able to like have bonuses to ability checks, teleportation effects, mind reading things, various powers and maneuvers that can be used both in combat and out, to give your character more options. So we developed that on Tuesdays, and we're currently converting the Battle Master into this mana system. So you are most welcome to check that out with us next week. So 6 days a week. I have 9 sessions across 6 days every week. When this Spelljammer book is done, we'll then be moving the Eberron project to the morning shift. We'll be moving the Martial Power system up in development to Thursday and Monday nights. And then we'll have... and then we'll be starting in on the next thing on Tuesday. So we are just having a rolling roster of what projects we're working on. And as one gets finished, we move everything forward in production and we start the new thing. So if you think this stuff is cool, again, be welcome to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to stick around to find out when we're doing more stuff and what it is that we're exploring each day. And you're most welcome here in the comments to hang out, shoot the shit, have some fun. So I'm actually pretty happy with how this is turning out. So I'm going to merge these down. Then gonna start processing through like this. There you go. And the underlying layer here like that. Get smudged in for effect. There we go. And now I can start working over here to get these all cleaned up. Add a new layer. You can add in some of these brightness effects. There. Beep, 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 beep. We're coming along here. Going to do these larger smudges, then we'll come through with a little bit more delicate line work here. This fire effect stuff is so fun to do. It's so just unbridled and like Inspire based and just open to wherever the pixels want to push themselves. It's fun. I like pieces like these organic and sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Chaotic compositions. It's fun to build the arrays of just mess. It's fun making mess look good. There you go. That looks good. Now I'm going to blend in some of this stuff here. Merge that down. Then we'll keep poking around over here. There are no real wrong answers here. It's just, is the aesthetics looking good? So we're creating this outer shell of darker red, and then as you move further in, it gets, you know, more white. With like little blurble effects going on. I love this stuff. It's so fun. Let's look at the skiff here. See if I need to like scoot it over. No, I think where it's sitting is pretty good. Let's tilt that. Now I'm just being nitpicky, but nitpicky is okay. Ooh. Maybe. Yeah, but maybe I do want it tilted. No, I don't want it tilted too much because then it doesn't look like it's... Nah, let's leave that be. Where were we at? Okay, yeah, that's good enough. Screw it. There and back again. I don't mind taking the walk just to realize where we want to be. It's actually, that's reassurance. There we go. All right, now we're going to make another layer, and we're going to 1 here, and then 2 here. And we're going to reduce these down to a very small there we go. So I can use these little sparks, like little licks, to be able to flesh out the shape. And then I can use this red to help counterbalance and shadow it. What I need to do when I'm working like this, I need to pay attention to, like, am I making it look like it has a specific direction? I want to be careful about whether I want that direction implied. Like if I have things like you know, up like this, then it implies that there's a central gravity that this is resisting again. But This is space, so there is no up or down outside of the gravity fields that are created by, say, the skiff or this this tradesman in the background. So I have to be keeping in mind that, like, this is down, this is up just as much as this is and as this is. These are all up. So I have to be thinking about just having these licks of flame radiating outward in general without any assumptions about up or down, because that'll break the illusion of where this is occurring. Fun stuff. And yeah, so Descent into Avernus introduced vehicle mechanics for the Infernal War Machines, which I love almost everything about it, except I didn't like the action economy and the movement speeds that were offered for these trucks. So that's where this all started, with modifying the vehicle mechanics so that you could have an effective Mad Max sort of combat narrative that can emphasize vehicle to vehicle combat at greater scales, at greater speeds than the 5-foot scale would offer. Like, these trucks can go like 60 miles per hour, so that's going to require a 50-foot square to be able to process that kind of speed on an ongoing basis. And these trucks are big, like they're gargantuan, like anywhere from 20 feet to 10 feet in size. So they were large-scale vehicles and large enough to carry siege weapons on them. So we wanted to lean into that aesthetic. And so what's interesting about the Infernal War Machines is that they're considered constructs. They are a type of creature in 5th edition. So when you're attacking the Infernal War Machines, you're able to use anything that you could damage a creature with, you can use against the Infernal War Machines. But in Spelljammer, the ships are considered objects, not creatures. So there's very little you can do to damage the objects other than like specific features and spells that damage objects, or like siege weapons deal damage to structures. So like a fireball doesn't automatically damage a structure. Lightning bolts don't necessarily damage structures. If it deals damage to a creature, it has to specify that it can damage an object or a structure for you to be able to damage a ship, which means that there's a very limited set of objects or like things in 5th edition at all that can damage ships. And so that really de-emphasizes the risk to ships, which I think was intentional. But it destroys the tension. Like if virtually nothing your character can do can damage the ships that your characters are on, then the only things that the characters can use to destroy another ship is siege weapons, which are using the 5th edition rules as written. That's an incredibly slow process, and it's a pain in the ass. So by making spelljamming ships construct creatures like the Infernal War Machines are, we create the opportunity to have both fighter craft like this. Like this is the size of an Infernal War Machine, while this is the size of like an actual boat. So, but both of them, hey Hornetico, but both of them use the same creature mechanics so that you can damage both of them. It's just that these things are 10 times the size as craft are, so they have 10 times the amount of hit points, but otherwise operate almost identically to how Infernal War Machines do. So that was a fun process that we get to work through. But as a result of that, by making that change, then fireballs are significant risks for ships. And then that also then implies, well, we need to have fire mechanics. So down in the hazards section, there's a section on catching and spreading fires on board a ship or inside of a building. There are no rules about fires. There's fire damage, and there's like dropping a flask of oil to deal fire damage to a creature that occupies or enters the space of that fire while it lasts. But there's no real mechanics or rules about fire, like a spreading fire causing damage to the object that is on fire, like a ship, like this flying fish ship has like 300 hit points, and so how many flasks of oil do you have to throw at that fucking thing until it gets destroyed? Well, the answer is roughly 60 flasks of oil. That you have to lob at it. But like if you dump a bunch of oil on the deck of the ship and the ship is being damaged by that oil, will not that fire spread because you've caught that ship on fire? Yes, logically it's going to, but there are no rules in 5th edition about catching something on fire and that fire spreading across the area. So it's like if it's just an object, then you're just going to damage the object, but it itself isn't actually on fire. It's just taking fire damage until the fire goes away. But when you have a large structure like this, not only can the ship itself be on fire, but everybody that's on board the ship can be taking damage for entering or for occupying or entering the space of that spreading fire on board the ship, just like you would expect for a flask of oil. So in the hazards section of this book, we have the effects of catching the ship on fire and the amount of damage that it deals as it spreads to the ship itself and anybody that is within the occupying space with that fire as it spreads. And then we have mechanics about like doing group checks to put the fire out, or like commanding crew to have a fire brigade, which eats up action economy during a round. So like if you lob a fireball and it hits the ship and the ship takes damage and it catches fire, then the ship is going to continue taking damage. And if your crew is occupying the space of that fire, they too will take damage each round. So again, we had the opportunity to flesh out some just basic physics of how worlds work in using the 5e engine that were presented to us, because ship fires is a classic threat, but it's not really addressed anywhere. So we got that, and then that also opened up the opportunity for us to build out mechanics for like smoke, and how quickly will smoke overtake the air supply of a vessel, and what does that impact have on the crew, and thank you, timer. Take a sip of coffee. So that was a lot of fun to figure all that stuff out. And so, like I said, even if you have a different system that you prefer as your primary vehicle combat mechanics in 5th edition for Spelljammer or Salt Marsh or whatever, the stuff that we provide in this book allows you to make rulings to enhance the whatever mechanics you feel are best for your game. But it adds options, and it gives you perspective and a different point of view about how you can how you can have 5e mechanics impact your game overall, like what you can do to make to have consistent rules in your world, so that when you make a ruling, you have a point of reference to compare. Like if you're going to have your ship smash into an asteroid, and you're going, like, say, if you move 50 feet as opposed to 500 feet, and you smash into an asteroid, like, that's falling. There are crash mechanics. Like there's like a paragraph on how much damage you take when you crash based on the scale of the ship you are, but it doesn't really address like how far you're moving, how fast you're moving, whether you're larger or smaller than the object that you're smashing into, how much damage does the object that you're crashing into, how much damage does that take? And these are some very basic physics that are literally not addressed. Like if you throw somebody against the wall, technically they're not taking any damage because they're not falling, right? But when we had the most recent, the Big B's presents Might of the Giants, they have the Giant Barbarian feature that allows you to throw people, but they don't take any damage if you throw them against a wall. Like they're 15 feet away and you hurl them against the wall, they take no damage. Like that doesn't make any sense. So there was a great opportunity there for us to, like Big B's highlights the fact, but we had already built these crash falling mechanics for ships, vessels, creatures. It all scales up depending on, and this allows you to take something like an asteroid and smash it into a moon. That becomes giant, like massive scale falling damage for the asteroid. And if the asteroid is significant enough in size compared to the moon, then the moon will also take damage. And if it's enough damage, you can destroy that moon. So we have mechanics here based on how big your moon, planet, asteroid, object is, how much damage is going to take over how much distance it's moved, and what does it take to destroy the two objects on impact. And like you can do, and it can get even more complex. Like what if you are on an, like what if this is an asteroid, you are here, and another asteroid smashes you between this asteroid and this asteroid. There are answers for how much damage each of these objects are going to take. You, the asteroid you're on, and the asteroid that's smashing into you. And like if you're on a planet and this asteroid isn't significant enough to destroy the planet, but it can damage the impact site. So again, you can scale in, like for the overall planet, smashing this asteroid into Waterdeep isn't going to destroy Faerun. But if the asteroid's big enough, it could destroy all of Waterdeep. So you have to scale that stuff out, which we've provided a guideline and a basic structure for you to be able to do that regardless of how large the objects it is that you're working with. So again, it just provides basic physics and rulings for you as a DM to eyeball, you know, how big of a thing is this, and how far has it traveled, and what's it smashing into. That's going to equal X, Y, and Z damage for the object that's being thrown, the object that's being thrown against, and anything in between. So it's pretty. It's an attempt to be comprehensive, and again, just provide all these basic physics for you to be able to make better rulings in your game. Stuff like that. Infestation, like the hazards chapter is actually a lot of fun. We already finished all the artwork for that chapter, but once this is published and it's online, we'll have the opportunity to do a lunchtime walkthrough. So if you check down below, or if you check my playlists, one of them is Elemental Key walkthrough, where we take the 20 some odd pages of that book and basically take a page or two each day and walk through what the entire document is, kind of like as a director's cut. Walkthrough is the best word I can think of, but basically walking through page by page to just have a conversation what my thoughts were about where those rules came from and what do they do, and what's some of the cool things I like about them, and what can you as a player use, and what can you as a DM take away from the Elemental Key supplement that I built. So that's actually in the Spellpoint bundle that's linked down below, but on my playlists on my channel here on YouTube. It's like a I want to say a 30 video series of just when I first published that book, I did a like I said, a page turner walkthrough, page by page through the PDF for you to see what it is, what it's for, what my thoughts are about it. So if that kind of stuff is cool to you, we're going to do that for this book as well. And it gives us the opportunity to talk about like how we can expand it and what some other ideas we can take away from it and how we can have more fun with it moving forward. So I like doing that. I mean, it's my... I'm seeing here that I have an opportunity. That helped. Let's warp. Nice. Merge that down. Let's work this in. There we go. Ah, I'm loving this. I think I'm content. I'm just about content. I would like to say I'm content with where this is at right now, but I am not. Me declaring this done offers the opportunity for Muse to say, nope! She pulls me right back in again. You are not done with this yet, sir, she says. All right, sir. That looks pretty good, though. I got no complaint about that. All right, I'm going to call this one done. I'm going to actually immediately recant that, and I want to fuck around with the... just want to reduce the intensity here. Actually, I'm going to take that back up. Yeah, I'm going to up that. I'm going to down the entire thing. Like that. There we go. Nice. Cool. That's our piece. What time is it? God, it's only 7 o'clock. All right, well, I don't have any reason to belabor this, so I'm pretty content with that. We'll probably pluck this out and drop it in as an illustration. But the next thing that we wanted to work on was the trim. So I guess that's what we're going to work on now. That's super fucking awesome. So let's get... let's stitch this shut. I immediately recant. I want to put... I wanted to drop that in there. That should be good. Okay, cool. Yeah, there we go. We're going to do that. We put a lock on that page. Oh my lord, we got so much stuff to do. Well, I'll be busy this weekend, that's for sure. We're still working on this one. We'll get back to you. And we're happy with this one, but we modified. We're gonna have to redo these because we're redoing the siege weapon icons on these ships. So I'm gonna have to go through and do that, which I shan't bore anybody with. I need to fix this. Finish that. Finish that. Finish that. There's this, and what was going on over here? For example, an illustration below, a ship on a map at the 50-foot scale can use 1 square of movement to surge forward. Ooh, yeah, I need to make a surge map. That'll be fun, but I'm not going to bore you with that. Pretty happy with how this illustration is sitting, but I need to obviously figure out the icons for those things. I think I'm just going to use Robotico, which is the font I'm using. I could use the Merriweather font that I have for my titles. So I got Robotico and I got Merriweather for the titles, and I'm using Robotico here for my I see that it's off a touch, so we'll be able to fix that. That's something I can nudge inside of Word when I get there. I'll have a grid and I'll be able to lock things down, but I do need to build a border for all these things. Let's see what's going on over here. Effects of grappling, undersized grappling attacks, breaking grapples. Like a skiff, like a 40-foot spiderling can't effectively grapple a 200-foot vessel. It's just too small. It's like a 4-year-old trying to grapple their father. It's you're just holding on, and then the father lumbers away. Ships are the same way. When a fighter craft or a creature that's 50 feet or smaller tries to grapple a vessel or a larger thing, you're not actually grappling it. You're just holding it, which is what we're talking about here in undersized grappling attacks. Is you're holding the object that you're attacking. So when you grab hold of it, they have to use an action or a bonus action or reaction to try to shake you off with a saving throw, like you normally would. But if they aren't successful, they can still move and they'll just carry you with it. And so you can grab hold of something and just keep stabbing somebody. You have advantage to hit them while you're stabbing them while they're trying to throw you off. So that has obviously a lot of applications. Like if you have your fighter jump onto the back of the Tarrasque and start stabbing it, that fighter or that barbarian or whatever is effectively just holding on to the Tarrasque. So, but there's no real mechanics about like what does it take to hold on, what does it take to shake them off. Like that we provide some very rudimentary mechanics here about holding on to a target. You can't use the holding weapon or the appendage of the creature that's like a hand or a tentacle. You can't move from the space that you're occupying while you're holding. Like if you release your grip and you try to move across the surface of the thing while you do that, if they're holding an action to react for when you move, then they'd have the opportunity to shake you off at that point. But while you have a hold of a target, it cannot use the disengage action to break alignment from your gravity plane, because like once you line up and you're inside of their gravity space, if you're occupying that space, they basically are dragging you with them when they move, but you are too small to drag that ship. So if they move, they're dragging you with them. And normally, if you're here, I think this is worth doing. So if you have so if you have a ship here in an air bubble, and you have another ship here in an air bubble, right? But these things are overlapping, but they're not completely, like this ship is not completely occupying the space of this ship. So if this ship moves away, they automatically become detached from each other. If you have a ship here and then you have like a fighter craft that's small enough to occupy the space of the ship, when that ship moves, it moves it moves you with it while you're holding on. Normally you'd be able to use the like if these two planes are aligned like this, I can use the disengage. Hold on. To say again, if I'm here and then I have a craft that's occupying the space with me, I will travel along with you. But if this ship uses the disengage action, it'll leave that craft behind when it leaves. Kind of like when I don't want to draw an attack of opportunity, I'll use a disengage action to be able to safely move away from you. A pilot can use the disengage action to like dislodge these ships from being inside of your gravity well. But if I'm holding on to your ship, I have to break the grapple first, shake you off of me, and then I have to use the disengage action to get you out of my gravity my gravity well. So that's really useful because fighter craft can't move as fast as vessels. So a fighter craft that can get inside the space of the ship that it's attacking, and if it has like grappling weapons or piercing rams or something that allows it to hold on, then it adds that extra layer of I can. If a ship tries to disengage and shunt me out of its space to move away, I can use my reaction to pace. And if I pace, that allows me to, even though you've disengaged, it allows me to actively stay in, like to willingly move my ship to stay inside of your air bubble. But if that vessel accelerates to a speed that's faster than my fighter craft can move, I can't pace it anymore. If they use the disengage action, they'll be able to then jump out and get me out of their space. It's like little things like this, like a lot of little intricate details about objects interacting with each other and occupying each other's space and the way that gravity works. And if we align our gravity planes, I'm now using your gravity plane to stay inside of and float along with. Like these are all things, these are all ideas that exist inside of 5e in what Wizards provided in a couple paragraphs, but didn't really dive into what does that mean, okay? So you have to spend the time detailing these things about whether you're going to stay inside of or not inside of a gravity plane. Like if I have two 100-foot vessels and they're sharing some space but not completely occupying the space of another, what does it take to disengage from each other to be able to move away from each other? Like providing the mechanics and like rules about how these things works allows a DM to kind of take a look at these things, grok it, and then be able to determine, well, is that dragon that's attacking your ship, if the ship tries to move away, will you drag the dragon? Are you going to take the dragon with you, or is the dragon still occupying its own space and is going to get left behind if your ship does so? These very basic mechanics about grappling, and here I'm going to get rid of this. You got grappling, and then we have aligning gravity planes here, and we have hold on, let's move back forward. Pacing, we have the rules about pacing here, and then even though you can the maximum scale of combat is 500-foot squares, because you can't effectively attack something that's more than a mile away because they can see it coming and just choose to get out of the way. We talked about that before. But you can move at 10,000 miles per round, but your scale of combat is effectively only 1 mile. So you can effectively move 10,000 times further than combat allows you to engage a ship in during a round of combat. So it's logical that you could say you're fighting ships at the 50-foot scale because you're in close combat with them, but you want to say jump, say 700 feet to another ship that's in a larger scale battle. You can surge, which is like you can take one square of movement, and that one square of movement that you have available to you this turn could be anything from 5 feet or it could be up to 1,000 feet. It's just how close are you to another object that determines how much movement do you really need. But you get basically 5 squares of movement as an object interaction, which replaces movement, like steering and moving the boat replaces your movement speed if you were walking through a dungeon. And then you could use dash as an action, or a rogue can use dash as a bonus action, or a monk as well can use bonus action to dash again. So you've got 5 feet of movement, and then you've got a dash action as an extra 5 squares of movement. Say at the 5 foot scale if you're a person, and then you take the dash action at another 5 feet squares. You have another 5 squares of movement, and then if you have the ability to use a bonus action to dash again, at the 5 foot scale, another 5 squares would be 25 feet. So you can use those actions for a total of 75 feet. But the ship can fly at 1,000 miles squares, up to 10 squares at 10,000 miles per single round. So 5 foot squares is just magnitudes smaller in scale of movement than you can potentially move during a round. So when we're talking about surging, we're talking about for every square of movement that you take, you've got 5 squares of movement. But if you increase your scale, that 5 feet could be a 50-foot square of movement or a 500-foot square of movement. But if you're at the 5 or 50-foot scale in combat, if I were to jump 1,000 miles as 1 square of movement, I'm disengaging from combat and just basically light jumping out of combat, which I can do by making a piloting check and risking inertia shock, because I'm going from 0 to a million in 6 seconds. That's going to rattle your brain if you aren't prepped for it. So that's a Constitution saving throw. But assuming that you're making a Constitution saving throw, you can surge by jumping scale and only counting as 1 square of movement, because you're just changing your focus of scale while you do it. But at the 50-foot scale, I can move 5 squares as my object interaction and be able to move 250 feet. If I'm close quarters and fighting another ship or trying to board another ship, I don't want to slam into it at 1,000 miles per, like 1,000 miles per hour. Or, sorry, it's at 5 million miles per hour. That's your scale. If you can move 100 million miles per day, you can effectively slam into something at 5 million miles per hour. That's going to cause a lot of damage to your ship. We were talking about falling mechanics earlier. That's the kind of crashing you can do. But if you want to be able to safely close distance so you can board that ship, you have to bring yourself down from 5 million miles per hour down to 10 miles per hour. So you can safely bump into that ship and have your crew jump off one ship to the next. So if I'm operating at the 5 foot or 50 foot or 500 foot scale, and I want to be able to move quickly from one side of the battlefield to the next, I can just change my focus out to, say, the 10-mile scale and just use 1 square of movement to move that 10 miles, change my focus in again to drop into the 50-foot scale, and use the other 4 squares of movement at that 50-foot scale. So I can effectively leapfrog across a larger scale battle to hit at this close range, disengage, jump over to another ship. It kind of like has that, to be able to kind of ricochet from one micro battle, like from one small map to another small map that sits inside of a larger map. Like if I have a 1 mile map, like if this is a 1 mile map and each one of these squares is 500 feet, I can jump from here to here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 squares away. I could jump 3,000 feet, which would eat up all of my action economy, or I could surge from here to here as 1 square, and then zoom in at this 500-foot scale, zoom into the 50-foot scale to try to board the craft. So I used 1 square to jump at the 1 mile scale, 1 mile, 5,000 feet, 1 mile. So I closed that 3,000 distance with 1 square by surging, and now I still have 4 squares left in my action economy using my movement to then be able to zoom in and work at the 50-foot scale to then at this 500 feet and 500 feet, I zoom in so that 500 feet is basically 20 feet by 10-foot square at the 50-foot scale, and your ship is going to occupy like a 4x4 space inside that 50-foot square, at that 50-foot scale, inside of a 500-foot square. By zooming the map in, I can convert that 500-foot square into a 10x10 grid of 50-foot squares, and I can then zoom out. That 500-foot square is 1 square in a 10x10 grid of 500-foot squares that occupy 1 mile. So anywhere inside of that 10x10 grid of 500-foot squares, I can use 1 square of movement at the 1 mile scale to then close distance immediately at that 500-foot scale, and then zoom in again to change that 500-foot square into a 10 by 10 grid of 50-foot squares that your vessel is occupying a 4x4 or maybe a 3x3 or 2x2 space inside of that that 50-foot grid. I can now enter that 500-foot space with your ship at the 50-foot scale and use 4 squares of movement at the 50-foot scale to close in from the edge of the 500-foot square to where you're at inside of that 10 by 10 grid of the 50-foot scale inside of that 500-foot space. So the closer in you scale, a square gets broken into a 10 by 10 square grid of the next smaller scale. So when you're moving at a scale that's that's larger than the scale of movement that you're inside of, that's effectively surging. I really hope that made sense because we get to illustrate that. So surging refers to increasing the scale of movement without increasing the scale of the current map. You can move up to 10 squares in a straight line on the current scale of map as though moving only 1 square at the next larger scale of magnitude. At the 5-foot scale, surging moves 10 squares while using only 1 square at the 50-foot scale. At the 50-foot scale, surging moves 10 squares while only using... that should say, oh God, I have an error there. Cool. This is why I go over these things over and over and over again, because I find errors. And this is not on my editor at all, because I had to rewrite how when I was imagining the illustration that I needed for this, I had to reformat the text, which meant that I had to go in and make changes. Adam did a great job in providing a basic format for how these things need to be written, which I've been able to consistently use to rewrite things. But when I rewrote this, I fucked that up. So great, we now got to fix a mistake, which is why we go over this over and over and over again to make sure that we find everything. Because once we had our editor go through, I can pick up the style of editing that Adam used and then go back into the document and use that same format, and I can effectively rewrite using the editing format that he provided for us. So he did a good job going over everything when I had it initially written, but when I had to rewrite stuff, I introduced new typos and new mistakes that I can then go through and do again. So at the 5-foot scale, surging moves 10 squares while using only 1 square at the 50-foot scale. At the 50-foot scale, surging moves 10 squares while using only 1 square at the 500-foot scale. And at 500-foot scale, surging moves 10 squares while using only 1 square at the 1 mile scale. Ironically, this would have been fantastic for use in 4E, because 4E always referred to things as squares of movement. They didn't get into scale like this, and I wasn't into 4E, and I sure as hell wasn't going to pay $5,000 to get a license to make this. But this is, I find it ironic how much... hey, how you doing? I find it ironic how much I think 4E when I'm building this thing, talking about scaling mechanics. So when I surge at the 500-foot scale, surging moves me 10 squares in a straight line, while using only 1 square of movement at the 1 mile scale. So surging at a scale larger than 500-foot squares moves ships beyond the range of combat, because you can only effectively have combat within 1 mile of each other, because of the amount of time that it takes for a ballista bolt or a catapult stone to move from the weapon to hitting the target. It's 1 round of movement for a mile. That is your scale of movement in siege combat or ship combat in Spelljammer. So if you're more than 1 mile away, the rock will eventually get to you. And we've talked about this before. But if you're aware of it's kind of like sneak attack. If you're aware the enemy is there, they can't effectively sneak attack you. If your ship is more than 1 mile away from an enemy ship and they're lobbing stones and ballista bolts at you, because space has no gravity, it will eventually get to you. But it's going to take more than 1 round. Which means that if you see it coming, you can just choose to get out of the way and it will miss you, because you literally are seeing it a mile away. Like, that's a funny phrase I like to keep saying, because it's an expression. I literally saw it a mile away. That's literally true here. So when we're talking about combat, you can't have combat at 1 mile or larger square maps because the weapons take too long to fire. When I rebuild this thing and I take it out to Kickstarter for sci-fi with lasers and stuff, yes, you can have combat at a larger scale than 500 feet because light moves faster than 1 mile per round. so that, I mean, there you go. But yeah, that's effectively like 60 some odd miles per hour. That 1 mile per round or 1 mile per 6 seconds becomes 10 miles per minute, which becomes 60 miles per hour. So ballistas and trebuchet boulders are effectively launching at you at 60 miles per hour. So there's your scale of movement. So that's why. But Spelljammer ships can move 100 million miles per day, which is 5 million miles per hour, which is 10,000 miles per 6-second round, which breaks down into 1,000 miles squares. But a 1,000 miles square is literally 1,000 times further movement than a ballista bolt can fire at you per round. So if you want to fire siege weapons at each other, you have to, even if you're moving at 1,000 miles per round, or a million miles per day, or whatever speed you're moving at, as long as you're pacing and moving speed with each other, you can still lob stones at each other because those stones are moving 1 mile per round faster than your current scale. So if two ships are chasing each other, you can still fire weapons at each other and hit each other because that new speed is relatively faster than your current scale. But if you're only moving like, say, 10 miles per hour and you're lobbing ballista stones at each other, if the pilot ramps up speed to basically light jump out of range of combat, unless you as the attacking pilot are pacing your opponent using a reaction to make sure that you're keeping speed with them, that ballista stone is never going to be able to hit them. That ballista bolt can't hit them because your ships have gravity wells. And while these ballistas are firing through gravity wells, they're maintaining a relative speed. They can't escape you. So if you can pace your ships as a reaction, kind of like an anti-disengage, kind of like a re-engage, but we call it pacing. So it's like an anti-disengage action is pacing. If you maintain pace, the opponent can't jump speed out of range of combat. You can stay in combat with them. They then have to try to shake you loose using the pursuit mechanics that we have in here. So while at the surface level, at the very surface level, the couple paragraphs of information that Wizards of the Coast provided for you is sufficient to just kind of glaze over combat. But their solution was to close distance, so you treat each ship like a dungeon, so that you're having characters interact at the 5-foot scale on these dungeon ships. But what people wanted was to be able to treat the ship as though they were creatures themselves, as though operating inside of a dungeon. And that requires a shitload more rules and physics about how objects interact with each other in an infinite space, which is what this book is all about. It's providing those mechanics for you to be able to operate at that. If ships are going to be able to operate at 100 million miles of movement per day, which breaks down to 10,000 miles per round, it takes a lot of rules to explain how all that crap works. So this document has 90 pages of object interaction, space physics, and how objects actually interact with each other using the 5e engine. So again, the DM can use these ideas to have consistent rulings. It's like, I feel like these objects should be interacting with each other in this way. And now that the DM makes a determination about what the scale and distancing and movement is with each other using these basic rules, you can then peel those mechanics back and dive back into the space and understand why your ship is able to like make a disengage action. Am I attacking with advantage? Am I going to get an attack of opportunity here? Hey, Nizo, thank you. I'm guessing you're new here. Welcome to the mix. But yeah, these are the mechanics. So we build the page, and then we go in and So here's the scale of movement, 5-foot scale for ships. Here's the 50-foot scale for for those ships, and here's the 500-foot scale. Here's how you can portray these different ships at different scales. And the mapping system that we provide in the maps aren't complete yet, but here's illustration. We are building illustrations for how, like if I put in enemy ships up here, and you have these ships here at the 500-foot scale, then when you zoom into the 50-foot scale, again, these ships would be occupying a larger space. So a lot of the illustrations that we have in this book that are filling up these gaps in the document are building these little diagrams to explain how these ships can interact with each other, so that the DM and the players can grok massive scale movement and massive scale combat and be able to simplify it to the same 5-foot scale of combat, because we're using the same action economy to pilot and attack and interact with ships at the 5-foot scale as we use, hold on, here it is over here. Where's my mouse? Blip. Here's our action economy. If you check in my link down below as I wait for my computer to update, it'll zoom in here in a second. But whenever I publish something on the DMs Guild, it's always 100% free preview. So I'm explaining these things, and we're building this thing here. And as soon as my computer will, it takes a while. I've got a lot of programs going here, so sometimes it takes a little while for this thing to zoom in. I'm not sure. There we go. There you go. Here's your action economy for the ship role: pilot, siege commander, squadron command. Siege commanders command siege weapons on your ship. Pilot moves your ship and does melee combat with melee weapons on your ship. Squadron commander commands multiple ships at the same time as a squadron or a fleet. And then support options allows a character to help other roles perform better with advantages like help actions and stuff like that. And it breaks down to the normal action economy that you're used to in 5e combat. Actions, bonus actions, reactions, and then attacks that you can take inside of the attack action. As you can see here, support options don't have attack actions, but siege commanders do when they're commanding siege weapons. Squadron commanders do when they're commanding squadrons of ships, and pilots do when they're commanding single ships as a pilot. So it all breaks down to the same 5e action economy. It's not roles that you're playing. Like, it's not like I'm a bosun or I'm a commander and like every minute I can make the ship go faster. No, it's these ships move so fucking fast that you have to resolve combat at the 6-second scale of combat. So you have to use the same action economy that characters normally have available to them. So instead of having roles on the ship, the roles are defining what type of action economy you can use at the 6-second round to be able to process these things. And you can use group initiative to have people working together to command siege crews or squadron commanders as a group to get more actions per round out of them than they normally would. Or as a pilot to move your ship and to be able to make melee attacks with your ship with weapons that are equipped on it. Squadron commanders commanding multiple ships to attack in coordination. So you can have like a room of goblins, like 5 or 6 goblins in a room, attacking your fighter and your cleric at 3rd level. Or you could have your fighter and your cleric aboard one ship and have like 4 or 5 fighter ships or small vessels attacking your ship. And it becomes, at the 500-foot or 50-foot scale, the exact same as it would be if your character is being attacked by 4 or 5 goblins at the 5-foot scale inside of a room. This document reproduces that kind of dungeon 5e 5-foot scale combat at the 50 and 500-foot scale. And once you move out of the 500-foot scale, you're starting to move into daily large movement, which becomes the exploration chapter, and looking at how you can move on a 5-foot at the 100 million miles square of movement, how you can move from planet to planet across the system, like from this planet to this planet. It's going to be 1 day, 2 days. It takes 3 days for me to reach these planets at this scale. So that lets us do hex crawls. I'm just using squares because if you keep a square, you can scale in from 5 feet to 100 million miles, and you're still using the same language. I can still use my same icon occupying this 100 million mile square as I'm traveling from planet to planet. And then we have mechanics about how quickly does a planet move from one square to another at the 100 million mile scale. The answer is very slowly. So if I'm inside of a system map and like on a monthly basis, these planets are going to move from square to square to square. Like it's every 10 days at this scale that planets move from one square to another. So if I just have a bunch of concentric circles on a map and I make this planet a pip, I can move the pip to this square, 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 to this square. And I can, again, we're breaking down the physics of how planets can move inside of this space so that you can properly project the speed of planets inside of a system if you want to track that movement. If you want to track that movement, you now have set rules to be able to see where planets are moving inside of the system and how fast the moons are moving around the planet inside of that system. So hopefully that stuff makes sense. Hello. So yeah, that's what this book is about. It breaks down all these ideas and all these physics so that you can have an effective Spelljammer space campaign. And eventually, when I'm done doing 5th edition stuff in D&D, we'll be able to take all these ideas, export them into a Kickstarter to have a more universal sort of flavor. Spelljammer inspired this. So I have the philosophy of give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. So Wizards of the Coast inspired me to build this book. It only felt right that I would create the book using Spelljammer and put it in the DMsGuild to say, these are the things that you can do with Spelljammer, but then extract all this stuff out and build something more universal like what is it? Starfinder, Paizo's Starfinder. I can take all these mechanics and use them in Starfinder. So I could then, once this is done, I could take these general ideas, translate them into Paizo language, and then drop them into Paizo Infinite, which is their online platform. Or I could make it just a generic D20 system like OSR, and then build a Kickstarter out of it and publish it using this as a proof of concept. This is how this stuff works. I now want to translate this stuff into something more universal that other people can use, like in Lancer, for instance. This would be great for Lancer. We could just translate it into Lancer physics using these same principles of scale and movement and break it down into Lancer action economy or Pathfinder action economy to be able to do these things. So it's just one step at a time. So it's going to take me years to do all this over and over again. But I honestly think it's worth it because it's good physics. So I haven't seen anyone else introduce this stuff. I've seen some people do things like have like mecha combat, like Mecha Finder is operating at the 50-foot scale, like mecha at the 50-foot scale. That's great. We already have that for all our fighter craft, and we've been talking about that for over a year now. So, but I digress because I've been ranting enough. The next thing we want to do is let's go find the piece that we just finished. Nope, that's not the one. There we are. So this is the piece that we just finished before I started getting on this mechanics rant. But this is sitting inside of the pilot roll action because it's talking about if you're a pilot and you're getting hit by a fireball, what does that do to your ship and your crew? Well, we have the answers to that here. And again, this will be 100% free preview. But there's 72 tokens for creatures, NPCs, ships, and maps for Light of Xeraxis that we include with this. So even though you can read the rules for free, if you buy the thing, you get all the tokens and all the maps so that you can actually use it. So hopefully that adds value for people that they're willing to pay for it. Yeah, I like to show. Not tell. And I like to demonstrate to you why this thing is valuable. So if you agree with me, you'd be willing to spend money on it. And so far, I've had a fairly successful business doing that. So God bless everybody for being honest and being willing to pay for quality when they recognize it. And I'm proud to be part of that recognition. So having said all that, back on task, the next thing that we need to do is build this gray line here is our trim. This is the border of the page, and all the art in the book, all the text that we have in the book fits inside of that margin. So now that I've completed this piece, we now need to create the margin here. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to see down here is our background. And if I open that up, here's our frames. So I probably should have done this a long. Honestly, frames is the first thing I should have done, but I was so excited about doing book art that I just started doing a shitload of book art. This is our 209th episode. So you can, this has been literally 13 months now that I've been streaming the development of this book. You are welcome to go back to the very first one. When I first got the Spelljammer book and I cracked it open and we were looking at the mechanics that are inside of it and me getting excited that the rules that we already had for Infernal War Machines would work for this. Episode 1, you can watch me start geeking out, and all the way through episode 209, we are now here with the book and we're illustrating it, and when it's finished, we'll publish it on DMsGuild and then you can use it for yourself. But right now we need to build frames. So my initial idea, which I think we can use, I'm going to build a background layer here. My initial idea was to have a, and I don't know if this is going to end up working or not, but the initial idea was to have a black strip along the bottom. So let's, I love this song. There, this is where we start. So we'd have a black base, and then we'd have it smudge up until I think I want to do that. Drop that. Once I have this background complete, like when I have this smudge background, right, we have this illustration that we did, and you can see how there's space going to the edge here. Ideally, what I want is to have this space like be roughly the same color here, so I can blend these borders together so that it becomes, it just flows into the margin without actually violating the margin. That's the goal that I have here. Which is why I said I really should have done the background first before I started doing illustrations, so I could see how much, how dense the space depicted in these illustrations would be as they hit the borders. But we're here now, so that's what we're doing. So we're gonna do this. I'm here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I do this art. Mondays and Thursday nights I do cartography and creature tokens for Eberron. Tuesday at lunchtime, I do a game development, developing new book mechanics, like all this, but for a different product. It's a mana system, a spell point system for maneuvers for like barbarians, fighters, rogues, monks, paladins, rangers, as well as options for artificers and warlocks, to have a completely separate magic system that full casters like clerics, wizards, sorcerers don't get. So it gives fighters, it gives martial characters the same array of options and the same resource pool that casters have, doing things that casters can't. So there's a divide between, this is magic, these are casting spells, and these are supernatural powers that martials can use to be like Hercules and Odysseus and stuff like that. But using the same resources, the same spell point system, so that they have the same language, but they're using a different vocabulary, but it's the same alphabet, if that makes sense. So that's what we do on Tuesday. And then on Saturday mornings, I do commissions, and I'm working on a book cover right now for some of my friends that are building an adventure for Dungeons and Dragons as well. So I'm here 6 days a week. I'm always doing something new. So if you're lurking or you're checking it out, like, subscribe, bell icon to get notifications when I'm live in the future, so you can just keep tabs on what we're doing. And as things get published, I come back and I walk you through what we published. Like, what does this thing look like? But let's not put the cart in front of the horse, and let's just get back to work with the few minutes that we have left this morning. I spent a good 20 minutes this morning geeking out on mechanics, which I do that. But it's my prerogative. I can do that if I want, because there's no real timeline. All there is commitment to get it done. So this is kind of like if I did a Kickstarter and you guys paid for this stuff first, this would be me completing the Kickstarter. You'd be able to check in with me every day. Hey, how's that Kickstarter project coming along? It's like, well, this is the page that we're working on right now. And I'll be able to publish, like when I do Kickstarters in the future, I'll be able to publish all the mechanics on Google Doc and make it available. Like if you check out the Martial Powers project that I develop on Tuesdays, that's a playtest document that's in Google Doc that you can access and build characters for Dungeons and Dragons from level 1 to 20 using those different classes, using these mechanics. It's already live. It's just in a very rough playtest format that I haven't even hired an editor to clean up the text yet. So once we do that, the text will be different. We can then publish that to DMsGuild, and you'll see the final product. We'll do all the illustrations here. We'll do all the walkthrough, all the rigmarole that we're doing currently here for Spelljammer. We'll also do for the Martial Powers book. But you're seeing now what that process is like. So by the time I finish this book, the Eberron Adventure book, the Martial Powers book, I'll have a good 300 pages worth of content that I've produced here on stream with you guys. That when I start doing Kickstarters, it's going to like, what's the risk involved in this Kickstarter being completed? Well, go check out the past 300 pages of book development on DMsGuild that I have that you can look at to see what the end results are. And then you can come here to my YouTube stream and see what it took for me to get there. So if you invest in this Kickstarter project, you can show up here every day and ask me, hey, how are we coming along? Or like if you're playtesting the thing with me, you can give me feedback or thoughts about it. So as we develop the book and lock down things, we can make sure we have the best product for the people that were willing to invest in it. And that, I think, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that. So I'm really excited about getting these books done to be able to demonstrate the tenacity and the endurance to be able to complete the project, so that anyone that invests in it kind of gets to be part of the creation process here, which I'm really excited. I mean, this book is, I don't have a Kickstarter for this book. This is going to be when I finish it, please buy it. But then all my books up to date have been that way. I am praying to the gods that during 2024, with their permission, I may be able to start developing like an email and like build out an actual website and have a Patreon that works, so that we can start actually doing these things. So here's my fade. I'm just trying to smooth it out, and I know I can do a gradient like a digital gradient from black to light gray. I could just click a button and do it, but I like doing this organically. I like to use as little tools as possible. I don't like AI. I think you're lazy if you're using AI. I don't care what your production value is. People fall in love with the art. They want the art. They want the artist that's doing the art. They want to be part of the process. I have to stop the document and open it up again because my computer locked up. Because I was moving my pen too quickly, it caused it to freeze. Because when I have OBS and Word document and Photoshop all banging together, it's, even though I have 32 RAM and an i9 processing chip, it still chokes. So I have a monster of a computer. There, I'm gonna turn the brush sideways so I can have a more gentle smudge. But I like doing it manually. I like doing as much of this as manually as possible. I like having that intimate understanding of what it is that I'm putting here. Like all these pixels that I'm pushing, this is giving me more skill. The more I automate things, the less skill I have. And my goal here as a human being during my time on this planet is to be the best damn artist I can be, and to learn and evolve, and to apply that same attitude of evolution and development to my spiritual life and how I treat others, and to allow art to be an opportunity for me to step outside of myself and outside of what I think is important for me, and to be able to see the bigger picture of what might be important for other people, and what can I do to help make that process easier for them, so that I can serve my siblings, my brethren. And so far, that's been a beautiful process, and I'm very thankful for the added time I have on the planet here to be able to do these things with people. Almost there. So in Spelljammer's Adventures in Space as presented by Wizards of the Coast, there's two types of reality. There's wild space, where planets and systems exist and people live lives and die. And then there's the astral sea, which is the backstage of reality, where time stops and time and distance become virtually irrelevant. Wild space is depicted as darkness and stars, while the astral sea is depicted as a shifting ocean of color and silvery radiance. So we're going to start with wild space here at the bottom of the page. Here, I'm going to change my background. There we go. We're going to start with wild space at the bottom, and then as we go up to the top of the page, it becomes astral. It becomes the astral sea. So we're doing a transition here from. We'll have stars down here, and it'll transition into the astral radiance. So we're trying just to make a nice smooth gradient to transition from the black of wild space into the gray of the astral sea. So once we get this gradient where I want it, which is we're almost there, stay on target. I know I'm taking a lot of time with this, but again, I want to make sure I like how it feels. That's the most important part to me. There we go. Just smooth that down. Low, we're down to a 20% strength opacity here, or a strength smudge. So it's very, very. It's smooth. Like if I use a high strength, like if I use a strength 60, see I can smudge and push a lot of pixels. But if I drop it down to 20, it becomes a very, very gentle gradient, very smoothing effect, very gentle. So you can transition. You can, and doing this is what allows me to learn the delicateness of the different strengths. Like if I just did an automated gradient fill with a gradient transition from black to gray with a click of a button, I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn to be delicate and what strength of a smudge brush do I need to be able to move pixels the way that I want to move them. So this skill becomes something that is applicable at a very small scale, as well as at this large page. There's scale again. That was my 20-minute timer. I keep a 20-minute timer so I can keep an eye on the clock. It's almost 8 o'clock here in Seattle. This is a side hustle. This isn't my full-time job. So, not yet anyway. Not until we start having really successful Kickstarters in a couple years. I'm okay with waiting for it. But my intuition tells me it can happen. So I don't mind giving my time to a business that is willing to help me fund my lifestyle and shelter and protection while I have the opportunity to develop this skill to be able to move out of being an employee and move into being a business where I can still start help other people with their money, to hire people to be able to build tools with me so that they can start achieving their dreams of quitting their day job and becoming a designer full-time as well. So if I have successful Kickstarter projects, I can start paying people. And if the Kickstarter goes really well, I can pay them really well. So this is about, I think I'm happy with this as it is. Let's smooth this down just a little bit more. Oops, blemish. Let's rub that out. There. So we're going to go with that for now. And then what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate the layer. We're going to conceal one of them. We're going to open up our frames. Bam. So that becomes our frame. So if this is our frame, we can come back in here and I can adjust this this border here so that this is the same tone as here. So I have just a few moments left. But this is going to allow me an opportunity. There. So then I can start taking these star fields here back here, and then I can start dotting them in here. And as I move up the page, the stars will disappear until it's just the astral sea up here. So I can do little color wash things. But as I move down, the stars will become more pronounced as I move further down the page. And then once I get down to the bottom here, I want to have a number of icons that if you click on them, they'll take you to the different chapters of the book. It's like exploration as a chapter. So like I'd have the like here's a dot, right? And I can have the exploration chapter. Like maybe the exploration chapter would be like maybe a map with a compass. Like maybe that's the icon we'll make. I don't know what the icons are, but that might be the icon that we make for exploration. And then like we'd have one for like combat here, and that can be like a ballista. That'd be the combat chapter icon. So I can have these icons along the bottom, and when we build the PDF and we seal it down, when you click on that, it'll take you, like if I click on exploration, it'll take you to the first page of exploration. Because we can do hyperlinks inside of the Word document, and those hyperlinks can take you to different pages to jump. Like you see that in table of contents. So you click on the table of contents, it'll take you down to the specific page. You can jump that too. Like I got to go here in a second, but just to demonstrate this real quick. Here's my books. Let's go to the 5-color mana spell point variant rule bundle on the DMsGuild. And then let's go down to the tap and tap burn 5-color mana spell point variant rule core mechanics. And let's open up the full preview. This is a 75-page document. You can see here it's 75 pages. And here it's full size, 75 pages in the document. And if I were to click on, see, it took me to the 5-color character classes. If I click here, it takes me back to the table of contents. So if I go down here to like variant concentration rules, it takes us down to the variant concentration rules, chapter 6. And then you can read about all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But if you go back up here and you click on the hamburger, it takes you back to the table of contents. If I were to go to, say, sources of magic, we're looking at the variant sources of magic, chapter 8. This icon takes you to the mana flow chart and how, like, this is like a 5-color mana, like Magic the Gathering, right? So you get mana tokens, and then you spend you tap the mana tokens by spending them. And then if you untap them, you put them back in the mana pool, or if you burn them, they're gone for the day, and then you dump them into your burn pile of total burn mana. So you can move tokens from one section to the other, and we have these. This is the elemental key book that we created. So you have a fire token, you have a water, you have a fire token, a water token, an air token, an earth token, or if you're using Magic the Gathering, you've got red, blue, and green tokens. So you can use color magic, or you could use the 4 elements for the elemental, the Way of the 4 Elemental Monk. So we have a book about how to use either elemental mana or color mana for your 4 elements monk. And again, this is a 14-page document. That's the full document that we have here. You can read this entire book if you want, but like this comes with a bunch. Like this also has. If we go into the full preview here, here's our color mana playtest, our playmat for elemental key, whether you're using elements or color mana, and you have up to 5 levels of casting as a half caster, and you're either going to tap or lock, and so you can move mana tokens from the key pool into spent key, passing through your 5 levels. So like if you had a 5 mana ability that you could maintain, like sustain, you could fill these squares with mana, showing that you're maintaining concentration on 5 levels worth of mana to focus an effect, and you untap it, or you could burn it, and then it becomes spent. So we have these playmats at the end of the document. So like when you buy this document, not only do you get the document, but you also get all the tokens and the playmat as standalone things that you can print out or you can use in virtual tabletops. So anyway, that's it for today. I am out of time. I'm going to be back here tomorrow morning in about 24 hours. We'll be back working on the book cover that I've been commissioned by Andy and Brian. If you think this stuff is cool, consider liking and subscribing, hitting the bell icon to get notifications. And I hope to see everybody again soon. Thanks all for hanging out today. See you on the other side.